Good morning, Voyagers. I am the last Omnitect, your favorite robot American, and welcome to our next session of Omni Draws. Or in this case, Omni Draws, what the hell? What Omni makes. Wouldn't be a live stream if there wasn't technical difficulties. Omni Draws! I just flipped through like 3 different scenes. Editor, cut that out. There is no editor. This is a live stream. Shit! Alright, well, regardless, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to have you all on board for another Omni Draws. So I'm going to edit that whole intro bit out. So let's start again, fresh. Hello everyone, I'm the last Omnitect, your favorite robot American, and welcome to Omni Draws, where we get together and do a little live-streamed art for my tabletop role-playing game, Legacy First Flight. I hope you're all doing well today and are ready for a little art. And as always, we're a pretty small channel here, so I'm going to preface the stream by saying, if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment below when the video is done or whenever you're about to leave with your favorite part, or a question you might have had, or just, critique me. Say you liked it, say you didn't, it's all engagement, I don't care. But whatever you can do to help the channel grow is appreciated in this age of YouTube throttling and killing everybody. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Morning, folks. I just got back from a nice long walk and came back to realize that YouTube, well, not just YouTube, but also, Windows, had just done a bunch of updates. And so that's why we're running a couple minutes late. I was actively hitting start at the time, and then my PC kind of finished its updates and disconnected everything, and had to restart the whole thing, so. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. Hope you're doing well as well. So, the past couple of times we sat down to do this, we have done some work for Legacy First Flight. Namely, we have done a lot of work regarding the actual creation of the different careers in Legacy First Flight. So, Legacy First Flight is a fast and light tale in the world of tomorrow set in my bespoke science fiction universe, which is set 400 years in the future. It is a distant time of interstellar travel. There are 8 sapient species in the galaxy. Each of them is a playable species, and it is a vast, wild galaxy where players play as Voyagers, who are basically adventurers that delve into the ruins of ancient ruin worlds and seek out the things that may be hidden there for the safety of the galaxy, as well as also for the adventure and the notoriety and all the other fun stuff. So, we're going to be jumping right into it and actually getting a little work done, I hope. We've been working on the careers the past couple of weeks. Namely, we've been doing a lot of work around the jockey. This is in part because the jockey, the last career we were working on, is a pilot. And what is a pilot without a mech or an aerospace craft to fly around and have fun with? Today we're going to be working on something wholly new, so we're going to question why that appeared on the left side of the screen instead of the right, but okay, weird. It's, again, it's update day here, until I move over to Linux, which I am planning to do once we finish releasing Legacy First Flight. I really don't want to support Microsoft where I can. If I can avoid it, I'd prefer not to. And I just don't want to make the big transition over while I have a lot of really sensitive data on my computer that if it gets damaged or has issues during the transfer, could cause some serious issues for releasing the actual core rulebook. So until then, I'm stuck on Windows. Until then. But after that, I'm setting my OS on fire and getting something else. If anyone has any suggestions for a good Linux distro that you know would work well with Affinity Photo and the Affinity Suite, please let me know. I would love to know that. I'm still a baby. I am but a bab, a wee bab. So let's start off with a couple of basics. We have our usual rule, where we talk about the actual, role of the particular career we're working on. Now, it also must be said that careers are not like classes in other games. We've talked about this before in the past, but I'll pull you guys in and talk about it a little more again. Just as a reminder, it's been a couple of weeks. So, it's been a week. Careers are starting packages in Legacy First Flight. Legacy First Flight does not have a bespoke class system per se. Instead, it is a system where, as you get your character additional experience and money, you can literally build yourself as you like. It's an a la carte system for character creation and character leveling. So whereas in Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, Starfinder, if I were to choose a fighter, I'm basically locked onto the path of a fighter. Sure, I can theoretically multi-class into another class, or get a subclass or some other variation, but generally speaking, rules as written, a fighter is a fighter is a fighter until the end of their days. They will always be dude who hits stuff and takes hits. Whereas if I want to suddenly become a wizard, maybe I could multi-class splash into wizard or take a wizard-like subclass, but I'm still ultimately, at the end of the day, a fighter, and I'm locked into that experience, into that goal. Whereas in Legacy, your starting career is just where you're sort of leaping off. You don't have to stay as what you began. If you begin your career as a soldier, trained in martial combat, trained to use heavy armor and exotic weaponry, you could end as an engineer with a specialization in repairing things and using advanced scientific equipment to fix things. And as, likewise, you can begin as a negotiator and end as a mech pilot. There's nothing saying you have to stick in one path or another. Careers are just your prior experience. That is the most important detail I can give you guys. So, let's pop through and talk about the different careers. We've talked about this before, and I'm going to show you guys an actual peek at my table. Here we go. So this is the beta document of Legacy First Flight. It's doing pretty well. But here are the 6 careers so far as I have developed them. We have soldiers at the top. We have operators next. So if soldiers are your more traditional war fighters, brawlers, skirmishers, they're the folks that tend to be the security personnel, the actual, combatants, marines, that kind of thing. The ones who tend to wear heavy armor and blow stuff up. The next are operators. Operators are usually the more roguish, thiefly types. Spies, assassins, infiltrators. They use discretion and advanced weaponry to get about and do their thing, as well as also hacking modules, allowing them to clandestinely engage targets in a more esoteric and exotic means. Jockeys are next, where they pilot walkers and they also can pilot aerospace craft, basically serving as either the party's biggest body, literally piloting a large creature effectively in a walker, or an aerospace craft, which is everything from a party dropship to a covering Apache helicopter. It serves in roughly the same category as that. So you can be either air cavalry, ground cavalry, the big brawler guy, but you're piloting a mech or piloting an aircraft, and ultimately, that's where your real focus is. The next one we're working on is the engineer. So engineers are interesting. Again, verbatim, as the text actually says, engineers are problem solvers. In the most practical of senses, when a starship's reactor destabilizes, a construct suffers crippling damage in the field, or the blast doors in a ruined world's vault malfunction and trap the team inside, it's an engineer's job to apply their training and work out an actionable mechanical solution. You all know the meme. Engineers solve practical problems. And in Legacy, that's true. They do. So, in this particular instance, engineers, if we go back to the actual licensing, because that's really what sort of is their starting packages, per se, engineers are versed in access to hard suit training and science rig training. So, hard suits are exactly what they sound like. Big, bulky, badass armor that tends to be worn to protect others from heavy impacts. We look at the big sliding scale of potential machinery that's available to a player character. On the far right, we have avatars, giant towering god machines that make you, iron deities, effectively. We have walkers next, where they're the more readily accessible kind of deal. On the left here, we have standard, armor, but on the right, we have a hard suit. Hard suits are designed to take a beating. They are incredibly durable, super resilient, and they can let you tackle mechs on foot. They're a little more frail than a mech is, but unlike a walker, which requires specialized training and also runs into limitations of its size and scale and practicality in certain environments, hard suits can be worn pretty much anywhere a person can walk, as they are incredibly physically powerful, and they can mount stunningly advanced weaponry and equipment. They originally started out as tools designed to survive incredibly harsh environments, and eventually got adapted into warfighting, because everything gets adapted into warfighting at some point. So, engineers get access to hard suits ostensibly for the purposes of engineering. If I'm working in a nuclear reactor and I need to go all the way to the bottom to do maintenance, wearing a hard suit to protect me from radiation is an incredibly useful idea. Likewise also, if I am going to work in like an incredibly hot or cold or high G environment, hard suits can provide a measure of protection. In addition to hard suits, we also have science rigs. Now, science rigs, as I get to the book art and open them up, are fun. Science rigs are basically walking scientific backpacks, basically a laboratory you wear in your back, utilizing advanced gravity and magnetic field projection technology, as well as also a huge esoteric set of tools and advanced scientific instruments. They can basically turn any battlefield into a science experiment. Science rigs create what's called a rig field, which allows them to manipulate things within that area, and are attached to scientific domains of study. It's not quite a full-on field of science, but roughly. So these domains are as complex as gravimetrics, allowing you to control gravity and its flow and its direction and intensity, and particle physics, where you can manipulate enemy reactors and create constructs of solid charged particles, as well as also reinforce existing systems, to something as elementally simple as, say, thermodynamics and cryonics, where thermodynamics allows you to introduce heat and energy into systems, creating explosive, fiery effects, and cryonics, which allows you to pull energy out of a system and reduce temperatures, create solid walls of ice, freeze people's blood, as well as also just armor them in ice. There's a lot of useful things, but basically each domain acts kind of like a spell-casting school. The difference is that science rigs are locked into a single field, a single domain. That is their design. You can always swap out your rigs between combat, or if you're really enterprising, carry multiple rigs and cycle through them, but they're really designed to be the most powerful whiz-bang of effects. If hacking is subtle styles of magic, almost, and it's technically not magic, but styled after spellcasting of the cantrip sort in certain systems, science rigs are styled after the big whiz-bang standard action style spells. The fireballs and cast through hells and teleports and things of that nature, where they are truly game-altering and are a big investment of energy and time and focus. So, those are the two things that engineers have access to: gravatic rigs and hard suits. Feels like a pretty straightforward thing in terms of what we're working on here. Now, engineers also have access to a significant amount of engineering. They can gain access to ordnance, which is basically the ability to use advanced weaponry. And technically, during character creation, you can invest in whatever disciplines, read as skills, that you'd like. There's no limitation in that respect. However, it must be said that, engineers lean in a very particular direction. As you can tell, when you're getting your discipline ranks, you choose what you get. So no matter what, you will always get an extra rank in engineering. What a surprise, the thing that you use to build and repair stuff. Or you can get awareness and engineering. It's your call. So basically, you'll always get engineering. The top one is a choice between awareness or engineering. And the bottom one is a choice between an extra engineering or ordnance, which is the use of advanced weaponry. Basically, any weapon that requires any weapon that you would want to read a manual before using. We have an idea in first-person shooter spaces that all guns be point and click, and they're kind of easy that way. But we all know there's weapons that in real life require actual training to use. A sniper rifle isn't just point and click. You need to understand what wind speed is, figure out ranges, and also working out things as simple as the curvature of the earth and the pull of gravity on your bullet. As well as also the considerations of firing a weapon who, if you dry fired from the hip, could shatter it. Whereas if you're using a grenade launcher, like a rotary grenade launcher, you might want to know how the action works, how to disable a safety, if there's a minimum safe range for firing it, how that works. That's kind of what ordnance covers. So ballistics is your pretty standard, I can pick up this gun and with very little effort figure out how to point it and shoot at somebody. Ordnance is the complicated stuff. The guns that have really specialized uses and require a little bit of thinking to figure out. So this means engineers can sort of vary wildly in how they can function and what makes them work best. So we're going to do what we always do in these art streams, and I'm going to roll a die, and that'll determine what species we're going to be doing today. So let's open it up and get to it. I just got to get it open. It's always hidden behind a thing. Here's our choose our own adventure. So we've already done some art before. We've done an Anazali, we've done a human, and we've done a sylph so far. Those are our 3 careers that have been drawn out. So that leaves us, since we're going to re-roll any that have already been chosen. So Anazali, human, and sylph are off of the table. So I'll be re-rolling a 2, a 4, and a 5. I begin the roll now, and I will actually... I think what I'll do is I'll actually get a dice... I have a little dice box here that I can use to show you guys, so you don't have to take my word for it. We are not sponsored by Die Hard Dice, but I do really like these little dice things. They're actually very good for role-playing and for wargaming, which is primarily what I use it for. Keeps the dice from bouncing everywhere. Alright, so, let's roll it out. I need to really dust this thing out. What a mess. Okay, so, take it, and... that is a 7. Ooh, interesting. So, yeah, you guys can... hold on. You guys can see, as I pop the face cam on, I'm not touching it or moving it. I am just showing you where it is. A 7. So, a 7, if we go back to our canvas, is the Oriname. The Oriname are fun, actually. I really like them as a species. Jelly babies is the term that we often settle to describe them. They are somewhere between a mollusk, a protozoa, and a jellyfish. And technically not even a jellyfish, but actually the sort of multi-colony species that's closest described by a man of war. I always forget the name of that particular species. Yeah, the Portuguese man of war, which falls under, like, marine hydrozoan. There we go, that's the term. It's a hydrozoan. So they're kind of in that hydrozoan zone. Awesome. So now we're going to figure out what we want to do. Our prior art of the engineer, as I will open that up right now because I still have the book art. Our prior art of the engineer has them as a click with drones. Which is a pretty... I'm going to keep this. Like, this is going to be used in future art. Just making that very clear. This is just the... this is just, you know, what we have drawn before. We're going to move in a slightly different direction this time. I want to depict them as a... preferably a hardsuit user. I think that'd be really fun. We've already drawn, technically, an Oriname soldier in a full hardsuit, but it was kind of just more of like a study of what a hardsuit looks like. So in this case, we're going to sort of do more of like an engineering hardsuit design. And I think that could be fun. Sorry about my sinuses. It's spring here in Vermont, and everything is sort of damp and mildewy, and we're not at the point where pollen is starting to appear, but everything that was dusty is finally unlocked from its icy prison, and it's everywhere. And as always, if you guys have any questions or want to engage me, please feel free. I'm always happy to chat and talk. But let's get to it. So we're going to just sort of go in here and we're going to remove all this. We're going to pop off every layer we don't need, which we don't need the ship. We don't need the tail. We'll leave our block, our shade, and our light layer, and we can remove the helmet, which I think I only sort of messed around with a little bit. Alright. So let's get to our blocking. I kind of want to do like an engineer, like a hard suit bent towards engineering. So let's get to this. I'm going to erase everything that is relevant here. We're going to put the shade layer, and I'm going to just reduce it so I have a rough gauge. And our light layer, which is likewise very low. So let's take our block here. And I'm going to give a very simple, like, kind of mid-ground, mid-shade block here. And this is where I'm also going to be opening up an existing piece of art we have now from the careers doodle. I'll have this off to the side so that I can reference it at any time. Okay. So they've got this fun, like, sort of stumpy leg shape to them, which is pretty useful. I'm actually going to doodle this out fast. I kind of like the idea of just taking the leg here, moving that forward. Maybe we'll have them crouched repairing something. That sounds like that'd be pretty cool. Okay, and we're going to give them these really thick thighs because it's a hard suit. It's meant to have thick thighs. I'm actually going to have it kneeling. I think that could be interesting. I always tended to pick engineers as kneeling, and I think that's because of the fact that engineers are almost in a way kind of like the most support-themed class. I feel like researchers give them a run for their money, but out of all the careers, like, engineers are the ones that tend to capitalize on what other players do more than almost anything else. Like, yeah, negotiators depend on what other players are doing for the benefit of, like, how they can negotiate their way out of, like, complicated circumstances, or work around, like, strange environments and strange, like, social circumstances. And engineers are very much usually running scientific interference for everyone else, helping them learn things that they otherwise wouldn't know, but at the same time, it's engineers that tend to be the ones that pick up the pieces of everyone else's mistakes. Usually, as a rule of thumb, when someone else breaks a door, it's the engineer who fixes it. Ooh, hold on, I'll just fix that bit right there. And then we're going to go in with the very thick kind of armor. And sort of pull that around the back. Kind of like the idea of this arm sort of coming down slack a little more. And the arm kind of resting here. So like the hand sort of splayed out on the ground. There we are. That feels pretty good. On the other side, we have the other arm, which we'll just have sort of like laying in the back. Okay, feels pretty good. I want to have the sort of like fins that are on the back pulled back a little bit out of the way. And I'm going to do a little work now on the light layer. And on the shade layer, where I'm going to just sort of take this in very fast. And we're just going to sort of line up where things are. Just so that way, now that the block is sort of filled out, I don't want it to be, like, lost, as it will, in the shape of it. There we go. Then we can sort of take this and pull this down. So this particular hard suit is like a very specific one. It's a scout hard suit, usually not made for like open battle. You can take it into open battle, but that's not really what it's for. It's technically for like ranging ahead or like lighter duty. I would say most engineering suits tend to be light, or what are referred to as battle hard suits, which kind of just sits them in that zone in the middle, where it's like, oh yeah, they're heavy enough to like shrug off mechs and even potentially dance with them for a little bit, but it's not exactly the priority of their design element. The priority of their design is to sort of operate in the spaces around combat. Okay, so you can have that there. They have like these sort of like little flaps on the side as stabilizers. There we go. We got the big thick legs. Got these dummy thick legs on these hard suits. They always tend to have pretty thick, like, really thick limbs. It's just sort of par for the course with these things. They're made to be really durable, and so as a result, their knees are really heavily reinforced. Their legs tend to be a little shorter than the rest of the body, but that's because they're almost like ape-like in their structure and design. At least for this particular hard suit. Other hard suits vary. It doesn't hurt that Oraname hard suits tend to be engineered for Oraname, and Oraname are kind of like a bowl of pudding. So they kind of just fit wherever they need to fit. It's really less of a consideration on like, oh yeah, this'll do. Like, this needs to be protected, and more of like, let's just make sure it doesn't get hit by bullets. Like, a person needs cushioning. Oraname, not as much. Not nearly as much. Okay, and then we're going to have the head sort of popped up here. Okay. I kind of like the idea that the head on this one is kind of almost like a tank turret. Like it's designed to sort of pop up and out. There we go. Now I can finish putting the block on this thing. Ooh, come on. There we go. That's more like it. So engineers tend to use what are referred to as repair arrays. Repair arrays are exactly what they sound like. They're these big pieces of equipment designed to sort of act like a one-person repair shop. It allows engineers to do stunning amounts of work with very little effort. And so I kind of like the idea of maybe using a repair array here. Let's take the whole engineer and shrink them down a little bit. That'll do. Nice. And we're gonna just delete the shade layer and add a new one in. And on this layer here, I'm gonna get to work just doing a little doodling. And again, it's nothing too extreme. Just some very simple, like, manipulators. And I can get in there now with the block layer again, sort of fill that out. So oftentimes whenever I'm drawing hands, I try to think about contrapposto. So contrapposto is a concept that is used oftentimes in art, which is basically the concept of the body at rest, is more or less what the translation is. It's a concept from the Renaissance. Basically the idea is that a human being's body will hold itself differently when it's at rest or at labor. It's the reason why like 90% of, and you will recognize this, 90% of Renaissance art tends to have everybody kind of just like I don't know how to describe it except for like, or resting, reclined, gentle, everything sort of soft. And it's because the body's literally leaning in on itself. It's bearing its own weight in a very specific way. And so, I'm gonna let my hair down. Speaking of contrapposto, I'd like my hair to not be up that much. Good God. I've had my hair tied up a lot lately. I'm really excited now that it's gonna be warm again, that I can let my hair down a little more. Less chance of snow and sleet getting in it. But yeah, so like, the body at rest is a very big deal for me artistically. I focus on it a lot. And I feel like it's the same sort of thing here. Like, hands can have a contrapposto too. When I'm using my hands, like, actively using them, they tend to be straight. Like, the tendons tend to be at a very specific angle. So, like, a fist, as an example. I'm trying to center this. So a fist, or a grabbing hand, or even a hand that's chopping. Like, these are hands that are active. If you relax your hand, your tendons naturally take a certain shape. It's like a gentle, curved grip, almost. It's kind of like the Lego cuff hand, the little... What's the bit from Lego Movie? You see the gesture I'm making with my claw hands? It means I don't believe you. It's that. It's that resting, like, soft grip. Your hands naturally relax like that. If you let them go completely slack, they kind of just hang. If you hold them up, they kind of curl in on themselves. So I sort of do the same thing here with the hard suit. The left hand is a contrapposto hand. It's literally curved in a little bit, not fully hanging, but sort of like limply hanging. And the other one is bearing weight, so it's more straightened. Now also, hard suits have different numbers of fingers depending on the model as well and who's piloting them. Technically, and like, Origami don't have hands. They generate pseudopods as needed because they're hydrozoans, so they don't really do like you and I do, where they have like a fixed number of fingers. It's kind of more like a gelatinous mass until they need to make fingers. But manipulators, on the other hand, that's a little tougher to do. You can do it. They do have, like, as an example, you can get flexible manipulators that are designed to sort of like retract or expand based on how much space has been filled. But as a general rule of thumb, if you want to have something that's really durable, you have to make it mechanical. And that requires a certain degree of fixed structure. And there we go. We're just going to pull that in a little more. There we are. That's a little better. Cool. Now we can get back on the block layer. Build that back in. Cool. This gives us a pretty good start to the doodle here of what we're going to be working on. Still some areas there's like little holes, so I'm just going to quickly go over in a pass and just make sure those are all covered. So I don't have any areas where it's going to be weirdly transparent. Usually I'll go back over this at the end and do what I call like a brush test. And just put a layer on the very bottom here of like the boldest, ugliest color I can think of. Or just the boldest. It isn't an ugly color. I usually use hot pink, and hot pink has its place. But it's one that will very noticeably be visible if I've fucked up. And then I just sort of patch it back over again. So it's easier to do it at this level. I also have a backing splash, usually, that I'll use. But for now, this will do. Okay, so now we're going to get to our other doodles. So there's going to be an Origami inside here. Let's get to that. This is also going to be a peek inside of what a hard suit sort of looks like. And have like an Origami head sort of peeking out here. So they always have like a mushroom kind of shape to their heads, which is always very fun to work with. Sort of like a lazy gelatin is what I would describe them best as. They're like almost a lazy Jello sort of shape to them. And they've got 4 sets of eyes. Or I should say they have 4 eyes, not 4 sets. They have 2 sets of eyes. Okay, cool. So we've got a pretty good Oraname in hardsuit thing going on here. And then we're going to give them the set of jets on here, as they have maneuvering jets on this. There we go. Okay, so you've got a pretty good start here. Now, I like the idea of this thing having, like, some kind of mechanical apparatus on the back. That would be the engineering rig. So we're just going to sort of put a couple of robotic arms back here with various parts. Very Mechadendrite-esque for you 40k pilled folks out there. To quote Bricky, you know, not to Boss Baby you guys, but, like, you know, sometimes every once in a while the Boss Baby reference is helpful. If you don't get that joke, then, you know, if the only movie you've ever seen is Boss Baby, then every movie is Boss Baby. And if you've only ever played Warhammer, or are only familiar with Warhammer, then yeah, a lot of stuff is going to be like, oh, it's Warhammer! Yeah, it's not, but hey, it's your frame of reference. I'm not going to shame you for it. So yeah, we'll have like a couple of other component parts back here, sort of all in their own little gimbals. Cool. And we're just gonna give a little like graspy arm here. That feels pretty good. And then on the other side, we can sort of have the arms reaching out and doing some work. And I like the idea of the arms being built to task. So, like, some are a little bit more, like, specialized than others. There we are. Give it kind of like a grippy hand to hold something. And we'll have it like being a piece of machinery or whatever that's being repaired. Maybe a drive shaft or something equivalent. Something that needs welding, you know. Engineers are not like meant to be the kind that sit behind a desk when they're in Legacy. There's plenty of those out there, the folks that their job is mostly in the basic, like, design side of things. But these are engineers in the sense that they work on an engine. They are actively participating in the process. So for them, they've got a very specific kind of goal and function and feature here. And we're just going to add some more parts back here to sort of just observe. We'll bring another arm out as well off of the shoulders. So we'll have it coming back around and sort of popping back up over here, because the other one's doing that too. I just got to make sure I keep in mind where the arm is reaching from. Because this one's coming technically from up here, so it needs to visually identify as that. Not just like coming out of hammer space, but coming out of the upper arm. And then as it gets closer, it gets wider again. And we'll have this one with like spectral, like imaging tech. Some kind of camera array. I usually think a lamp is a good idea to have as well. Whenever I'm doing repair work. It's, you know, anyone who's ever worked with their own car, you know the drill. Like, the stuff you need to repair your car seems easy until, like, you start getting large amounts of repairs, and you're like, oh, okay, I actually need this tool to do this thing to get this extra stuff here. And, like, a simple robot hand here as well. Just in case it's needed. There we go. We can get onto the block layer again and add this on. So this feels like a pretty good engineering, like, doodle so far. Sort of shows what they do in field. Shows them using one of their pieces of equipment, in this case, a hard suit. And again, you are licensed to use the technology, even if you don't, like, actually actively use it in Legacy, so as a player character who's an engineer, you can be like, hey, I started out solely working with a hard suit, and maybe I eventually want to get a science rig. You can absolutely do that. There's nothing stopping you. Likewise, you can begin with, like, a science rig, and then be like, I would like the protection of a hard suit because our environments are getting really dangerous, and I don't want to die. Like, these are all options. This is kind of the perks of starting with a background career. It gives you options right out of the gate that don't require experience or money to get. Normally, to become licensed in something, you do need to spend money. It's money and time. You basically need to take a test, which in this case is literally like spend money, and then make a roll, prove that you're skilled enough in the skill that's required, the discipline that's required, and then you have the thing. So it's kind of like you're not even buying the license, you're buying the chance to earn the license. There we go. So we're looking pretty good so far. I like the shape of it. It has a very good vibe to it. I kind of want to do a little more with our Oraname friend here. So I'm going to go in here and we're going to, like, give our Oraname a little bit of a harness. Here we go. I kind of want to give him, like, almost monocles a little bit. That sort of come off the side. And then the interior of the hard suit has, like, a very specific shape to it. It's very cushy and padded. Okay, let's get to doing the actual shading here. Alright, so let's start with some basics. We're going to go with a 25% shade, and we're going to start hitting areas where light doesn't come from. Where is our light going to come from? I'm going to make a sun, and we're going to choose the angle. I kind of want the light to come from behind. So it's going to be slightly behind. We can work off of that. So that's going to put most of our machine into shadow. Make that like a 35%. That feels pretty good. This will give us some very defined shapes right out of the gate. And all the areas under here are going to be in very stark contrast because they're very much in the dark. No light's getting underneath that. I promise you. We have the interior of the helmet. Okay. And we can sort of lean in here a little bit with some of these shapes and areas. Really adds some fine detail. Okay, and areas where the sun isn't hitting are going to get hit with shade. This area down here tends to... This is like a softer curve, so we're going to start with like a 15 and work our way up. And then work our way back down again. It's at 35. Alright, we can sort of get this area in here. This is going to be the join between the two parts. Nice. Okay, and we can sort of get a little bit of this around here. Again, it's a softer curve on this part. So we're going to start from a lower point and work our way up to where light will hit it most. Nice. Okay, we really don't need to do too much with the cybernetics there. Those will be fine. Okay, and I'm going to go back over here. Nice. Alright, that'll do. Okay, let's get our light layer going here. We're going to start working on the actual, like, where the light will strike that's most obvious. Okay, so we've got this here. So this area here, there'd be a little bit of light coming over the edge. And light would get caught along the ridge of this. This will sort of give us a little texture as well. We'll catch a little light along the edge here. Just sort of filling this out as we go. Okay, so this is giving us some pretty good shapes here. Let's get inside and do a little bit more like doodling on our Oraname friend where the light would hit them. And then we're gonna just get there. Nice. And usually I like to sort of make the Oraname a little translucent, so inside them they have like a degree of light. Sort of filters through. This is because the Oraname themselves are actually made out of like a cytoplasm, so you can actually see their internal organs a little bit through them. Their ganglions are kind of visible. There we go. We're making some good progress here. I just want to save so we don't lose anything. So far our Oraname friend inside's looking pretty cozy. Let's do a little bit of, like, shaping of what's inside here. Because, again, there's, like, a solid brick, sort of foam in there that they're resting on. And then we're going to sort of get up on here. Kind of want to work on a locking mechanism of sorts. So it's sort of visible, like, how this secures itself. And then inside the top, we'll have like we can have like a pale light coming out of it, but I think we're fine without it. Let's get on our shade layer here. Put this at like 25. Okay, let's get this to 45 here. Now we're just going to put some of the little vents that Oraname have on their neck. This is actually, fun fact, how they kind of breathe and eat. They literally suck in nutrients, usually like small protoplanktons and stuff like that, in through their gills, push it through their cytoplasm, they digest it. It's a pretty efficient system. There we go. Let's get to our light layer again, because so much has not been done. I believe I said 45, but not 100%. And we sort of pull that in like that. That gives us our layer. Beautiful. There we are. Okay, we got some good stuff going. Let's get in our light layer again. Start hitting up the areas where we know light will hit. Mostly along the curves of armor paneling and stuff. And where the light would hit most directly. And we can sort of pull this along here. Nice. Okay. Now we just sort of take this section here. And I realized I missed a part of the design. There's kind of like a little divot there, almost like a belt buckle would fit. I need to fix that. We're going to go into our shade layer, and we're going to add a bunch of shadow into that. Just sort of make that very clear that's a dividing point. There we go. That added a lot more definition to the shape of the torso that I didn't feel was there before, and feel like it actually improves the picture a fair bit. Engineers always have a bit of a soft spot in my heart. Or I should say, I always have a soft spot in my heart for engineers. Wow. I have a soft, engineers have a soft spot. No, I do. I have a soft spot for engineers. And that comes from the fact that for a while I trained as one. I don't talk super long about it usually. It's a topic that's come up a couple of times. But as a general rule of thumb, I did a fair bit of work for a while trying to be an engineer. This actually came from the fact that I had a huge love of space, and for a really long time I desperately wanted to be an astronaut. More than anything. And the easiest way to do that is to get an engineering degree, a master's or a doctorate preferably. And then, before you know it, you can end up in space. It's not as easy as that, but it's basically a starting requirement to become an astronaut, is to have a doctorate or to serve in the military and become a pilot. Usually that's your best two methods. If you can do that, then you're good. But I wasn't fitted for that. Simply put, I just couldn't. I wasn't wired like that. I tried significantly. I tried for a while to do engineering. But I kept running into the issue of what I wanted to do was to create things, to draw things from scratch, to make things from scratch. Engineers tend to work on other people's projects. They tend to get hired by engineering firms to crunch numbers for someone else. And I'm not gonna lie, the thought of spending my life crunching numbers for somebody else's dreams felt incredibly disheartening to me. No shame to those of you out there who do it. There's plenty of folks out there for whom engineering is very fulfilling, and I respect you too. Like, it's valid. It doesn't make you any less creative than me. But for me, I'm ruled by my creativity. It's how I get by day to day. And I realized I put this in the wrong layer. Shit. Ah, well, fine. Whatever. You work around with what you got, I fucked up. This is all going to end up on one layer anyway. So, there we are. So we can sort of add that in there, get that crease. That's a little better. Okay, and we can sort of get these parts in there too. There's like a sort of a thick area of like connective tissue there. We're getting a light layer again. There we are. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Cool, so it sort of shows off, like, the interior structure of this thing. How it looks, how it works. It's kind of like a folding panel. I mean, it is a folding panel, basically. And that goes back on rails that sort of traverse the whole length of this interior part. So it can sort of ratchet forward, ratchet back, shield from above. There's this one game I played a long time ago. I played a while ago. I'm not sure many folks remember it, but Hawken is a very specific design scheme where they had like these big, thick shields that would slide over the heavy mechs. And I kind of liked that idea, so I sort of incorporated that a little bit into my hard suit design. So if anyone out there ever plays Legacy and you worked on Hawken by any chance, and you're like, oh shit, I recognize that. Yeah, you inspired that. Thanks. Seriously. I loved your game. I wish it got more support and love. I wish it didn't discontinue, but all things have their time, I suppose. Hawken just feels like it kind of never really got its time for me. And by the time I could finally play Hawken had ended. So, alas. This is my little way of keeping it alive, bit by bit. Just for a little while, in my own way. Okay, and we're going to add some lighting to the surface of this. Go. Then we can sort of add a little more shape back there. And then we can sort of add these little, like, pads on the side. Nice. Okay, that feels pretty good. So you got ourselves a pretty good shape for this hard suit here. It's already sculpted out a pretty decent, like, frame to it. I'm gonna add a little more light around the side where light hits it the most. There we go. And then we can sort of pull that down. And I can add a couple of details. It's funny, when you're drawing, like, and you use extreme lighting like I do, you can kind of leave details off till you add them with a later layer. I don't even really need to add, like, every detail of the mechanics. You can imply it very heavily from how I draw these parts. That's on the white layer. Put this down here. Put this on the 75. Put that on the shadow layer. And I'm going to add a little extra detail around there. Put this like 25%. There we go. That feels pretty good. And I can add some extra shaping there. Lovely. I love when a plan starts to come together. Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, I'm digging this. This feels pretty nice. Cool. And I can go in here. We can hit the edge where the light's going to hit it most. Oh, it's on the wrong brush. Figures. There he goes. Like, why aren't you working? That would do it. If I have the wrong tool and I'm expecting it to behave a certain way, that's not going to help me. Always check to see what tools you have attached to what, like, keybinds. I really should go through and just rebind everything. Keep some of these brushes on one thing, keep some of these keybinds on another. Because the fact that the paint tool, color replacement tool, and the pixel tool are all in the same line kind of bugs me. And I can fix that, I just haven't. That's really on me. Okay, now we've got this. We can add some very clear delineations to it. Make it very clear what those are. You can go in on the shade layer. I'm gonna add a little extra onto this layer. I'm gonna stop calling it the shade layer, start calling it the detail layer. Feels good. Okay. And we can sort of work off of this. And it's just about compounding details, making things sort of agree. It's usually the way that I often will describe it. It's making details agree. Going like, oh yeah, I want this to look like this and this to look like that. You know, by the time you're done. Want some of this on you that? For you good mythical morning folks? Here we are. Okay. Nearly done. Gonna add some extra detail there. Hit it with the light layer again, bring this up to like a 25, that'll do. Bring that up to 75. Bring this up to 45 this time. There we go. Okay. Nice. So this has actually got a pretty good design to it. I'm very pleased with how this is looking. Let's make that like a 25% maybe. Even that's too strong. 5% maybe. Yeah, it's like a very diffused kind of lighting here. Where you sort of make it clear where the light's coming in, where it's not. Where the angles of things are playing off of other things. And because of the angle of this thing crouching, the backs of the legs actually get more sun than the fronts of the legs, which is an interesting little point. Okay. Let's get the actual tools now. We'll put this at 25%. There we are. Where light would hit most intensely would be the tops of these. And the sides where the panels would literally catch the edge of the reflecting lights. Let's sort of fill that in a little more, remove some of that blacker area. Some of that outline. Let's bring that up to... Yeah, let's take that to like a 10%. There we go. Okay, that's looking pretty good. 45% for the other side, where the light would play strongest. And then we go on to these robotic limbs. Nice. Get the little camera edge here. It's like the idea this is like literally just a scanner. So we're gonna get the edges of it. And the most intense of lights. And then we're just going to sort of put a little bar over the surface of that. Make this like a deep sea kind of brace lamp. A work lamp, so that if it gets bumped into or damaged, it won't get too hurt or break. And then we do the same thing here. The difference is that's going to have just like a couple of scanners. Doesn't need to be nearly as bright. Yeah, that's looking pretty decent, actually, all things considered. I realize I have this, again, labeled as light layer, and I just need to come back and be like, no, it's detail layer. Also, as always, if anyone's ever curious what music I use, please feel free to check in the description below. Likewise, a huge thank you to all my amazing patrons. At Tier 1, Ampersand and Atlas. At Tier 2, we have Necrodamus and Souls Rolls. And at Tier 3, my Ironclad allies at 50 a month. That's Mossy the Mighty and Heinrich the Heroic. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much. You keep my channel humming along. And if you too want access to my webcomics, tabletop role-playing game stuff, or heads-ups on my YouTube and Twitch streams, go to patreon.com/thelast-omnitect. I promise you, if you go there, I'll make it worth your while. We have weekly schedule updates there, plenty of lore and art peeks behind the scenes that no one else gets access to, and also a complete catalog of all my webcomic works, including my ongoing webcomic, Gentry Delon Ain't No Fascist. If you're a subscriber, you'll get shouted out on those webcomic projects on a number of my YouTube videos, like this one right here. And on top of that, you will also get producers credits in Legacy First Flight and any of my future TTRPG projects. Plus, all paying patrons get access to my webcomics 2 weeks early. So please, go over to patreon.com/thelast-omnitect. We're an incredibly tiny YouTube channel. I'm an incredibly small creator. I'm just getting my footing, and I don't get any money from anything but Patreon, so any help you can give me is amazing. Alright, let's get back to it. Also, again, a reminder, please slap the like button, hit the subscription. We're a super small channel, and every little bit helps, so thank you. I'm just gonna make, like, little grabby hands here. Like a little grabby bit. I don't even know what that tool is, but it looks cool. And that's what matters. It's science fiction, right? So, like, there's some things that need to look accurate. So I'm kind of going with, like, a particular type of, like, grabbing claw. Almost like the kind of grabbing claw you would use to, like, grab a water bottle or something, or, like, to grab a beaker. And for that, it's fine. Really, the trick is making sure that all the parts agree on where the light is coming from. So, like this round gimbal here, just gotta make sure that part is correct. And then on the other side, we have that little hand grabbing it. There we go. And then we're just going to get the little areas where it's broken, clearly highlight those. Here we go. The funny thing is, to me, I see so many more flaws than you guys do usually, because I'm like, oh god, that looks terrible. And then I look at it from a distance. I'm like, actually, this looks fine. It's going to be seen, like, the whole picture is going to be smaller than a Polaroid. So, like, in the book, it's probably going to be less than, like, 2 to 3 inches thick. So no one's going to be zooming in a fine-tooth comb like, oh, look at that horrible, messy line. No, they're going to be seeing something like this. Like, it's not going to be big. And as a result, this actually looks pretty decent, just right off the rip, which is a great thing to see. No small part of my art journey has been learning to admit that I'm my own worst critic in a way that's not helpful. And I think that's a thing that a lot of artists really need to grapple with themselves, is the idea that critique needs to come from a place of wanting to improve and wanting to help others improve. Which is why I actually don't think much of the internet does critique. It's that they're functionally not doing it. Most folks on the internet who will comment on your art will either give you a thumbs up and be like, that's sick, and oh thanks, that's awesome, that's actually productive and constructive, thank you. Even if it isn't teaching me how to improve, it's teaching me that, you know, my work is good enough to deserve admiration and respect, and that's actually an important lesson that I don't think enough artists internalize, and it can lead to a lot of burnout, which is really unfortunate, especially for super talented artists who don't really see people liking their stuff. But on the same side of that coin, there's also a huge number of folks that for them is just tearing stuff down. It's going, oh, this is ass. This wouldn't look like this. This wouldn't look like this. And for a lot of people, they think the critique has to be harsh. And it doesn't, actually. Critique can come from many places, and they don't all have to be being an asshole. In fact, in my experience, being an asshole tends to be the opposite of critique. It tends to be just, wow, that person needed more hugs. Well, what's up with that person? Is that person okay? Do they need an intervention? Someone need to come to their house and make sure they're doing alright? Knock on the door? And, you know, so, like, my point is respect yourselves as an artist. Like, respect the fact that you're in a process of growth. Respect the fact that your work will never really truly be done. Because your work is expression. And you're never going to stop expressing yourself till you're dead. And even then, I don't know, like, depending on if you're buried, you might express yourself a little longer. So yeah, just give yourself the space and the time to grow. Respect yourself. Don't take yourself apart constantly. And for those out there that think that critique is telling people how much their art sucks, don't worry. You're a fucking idiot, and we all know it. Any artist out there who takes the opinion of those who think critique is insult and think that it's about scoring brownie points with people who will never meet them, you're not engaging in critique. You're just causing cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And you are noted for being that asshole. We all recognize you are that asshole when you do shit like that. So never forget, we got your number. But to everyone else who's an artist, we got your number too. You're creating something incredible. Give yourself a little shade, a little grace. Let yourself build. And I'll be real with you, I actually don't find much benefit from going to places like Reddit. There's a reason why I've had some people go, do you have a Reddit? And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, why? And because I don't want to hate myself. That's the real reason why. I don't want to go on Reddit. I don't think I would actually get much out of it except for a lot of imposter syndrome, which I already get that. I don't need your help. I don't need your help giving me imposter syndrome. I can do that myself. I'm a big boy. My imposter syndrome is homegrown. And so, like, I just don't go there. I don't find much benefit in it. Are there incredible artists on Reddit? Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Are there plenty of helpful folks? Oh yes, I personally witnessed it. Are they worth wading through the assholes present? No. I don't, not for a second. Hell no. Okay, and I'm just gonna get these last lights. And yeah, that feels pretty good. And I just want to put some, like, internal cockpit lights and stuff in there. Just to make it clear, there's like an internal like seal here as well. There we go. An engineer. Feels pretty good. The results look pretty decent. We don't need to know exactly what they're repairing, some kind of crankshaft or something. What matters is the vibe is present. And the vibes rule here in the House of OMNI, where everything I do is kind of impressionistic and very, like... I tend to be very painterly. And for some people, they think that's a negative, and to them I say, okay, my art isn't for you, fuck off. Have a great day. Have a great day, fuck off. I hope your day is better than the day you tried to give me. Yeah, I like this, actually. This turned out pretty good. I apologize, by the way, if I seem like I move stuff weirdly on the canvas. I have to constantly vacillate between screens here, and so, like, whenever I'm doing that, inevitably it drifts further and further out. So, but yeah, I feel like this final piece for the engineer is pretty good. Oh, we can also turn off that the sun. There we go. Do I have like a splash behind any of these other ones? Oh yeah, I have a nice splash. So let's add a nice splash layer. Okay. Take this, hit it with a nice black. And there we go. The engineer. Not too bad, dare I say. Not too bad at all. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. I am the last Omnitech, your favorite robot American. And I will see all of you folks next time. Thank you, as always, again to my amazing patrons. As I said before, Ampersand and Atlas, thank you guys at Tier 1. That's $5 a month. Necronomicon Souls Rolls at Tier 2. That's $10 a month. And then finally, at Tier 3, Mossy and Heinrich. Mossy the Mighty, Heinrich the Heroic, at an incredible $50 a month. You guys are truly the wind beneath my wings, and you have dramatically improved the life of me and my family. Thank you. I appreciate you all endlessly. To all my patrons, whether or not you're paying or not, thank you for your following. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your time. And I hope you all out there have a good day. Hit like, hit subscribe, drop a comment on the video, and I'll see you out there. Peace.